myself. We sat down in the pub and I was like, my jeans feel really wet. And I was like, was I in such a hurry to get them off the clothes horse that I put them away when they weren't dry? And then I was like, or what if I pissed myself? But that wasn't the issue. Like, if I...
So you were fine. You were fine with that.
Yeah, no, this is what the issue is, right? If I'd actually pissed myself, right, and knew about it, I would be fine, right? But it's the fact that I wasn't sure.
Hello and welcome all into the MO podcast. As always, you're here with me, Contumacious Ant.
And me, Atreya.
And this week we are going to be talking about the mysterious death of Kay Hall. Now,
I don't know this one.
Yeah, now, there is not very much out there about this. So,
12-minute episode, and 7 minutes of it is just outtakes.
Not really, because I have borrowed heavily from the Trail Goes Cold podcast, and that gentleman dragged it out to 40-odd minutes, so...
Alright, okay. At least you cited him, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I can't remember his name, but literally, the Trail Goes Cold podcast is, for Unsolved Mysteries, it's absolutely brilliant, and... he is the only one, apart from Unsolved Mysteries obviously back in the day covered this, but it was like a 10-minute segment and it only had her husband on it, and as we get further into the story you could see why that could be a little bit bias of it. Now this is, like I said to you last time, it's a little bit of maybe Brian Harvey-esque about this. So if you don't know, Brian Harvey was in E17 and he reversed the car over his own face while eating jacket potatoes. That's actually a sign in Walthamstow that they have up for the legend that is Brian.
He's not a legend.
Oh, House of Love was a banger.
He was obsessed with E17. He used to dress like Brian Harvey and everything, so he dressed like a plonker as well.
I won't go that far. I think Tony Mortimer was the genius behind that band, I think. Anyway, I won't go into the depth of my knowledge on them.
Yeah, buy some concert tickets for their reunion with Steps and Five.
I don't actually think they talk anymore, but let's move on quickly because I may know a little bit too much about them.
Somebody subscribes to them, I guess.
Look, legend. So, this also features something called an Alford plea, which is the most bullshit plea that you can get in any kind of court. And we'll get onto it later, but it's just completely mental. So, on September the 30th, 1987, Kay Hall was found under the wheels of her own car on a back road in Virginia. Now, a few hours before, she was drinking with her husband in a local country club. And when she was found at 9:45 p.m, her body was still warm. But she was under the truck in a way that seemed a bit suspicious, so the cops deemed it murder straight away.
Right. I mean, I'm just going to say right off the bat, how can you be under the wheel of a truck in non-mysterious circumstances?
So, now, this is the thing. We've mentioned Brian Harvey. He managed to reverse over himself. I have forgotten the guy's name, but that guy from Star Trek. Yeah, Star Trek, the young Russian guy. This is actually how he died. He reversed into himself.
How do you reverse into yourself?
So maybe the car weren't in park, and he got out with Anton Yeltsin, I think he was
Yeah, but
called.
he's
So
still moving really fucking slowly, so you just move out the way.
so
How hard is it?
basically he was. I think he got out of the car and he was opening the garage, or he was doing something behind the car, and it was on a hill. It ran into him, and he wasn't found for a few hours. So it kind of
Again.
eventually crushed him to death.
But again, move out the way. They're not going that fast unless the hill is like that, right? In which case the car just goes vroom.
But then if it's got you pinned,
Still like,
you can't move, can you? Because you've got a ton of car on you.
You hear the fucking wheels creaking on the gravel. You hear like a and you're like, oh fuck! I didn't put the car in. Fucking brake again, and then you just move out the way. Who are these idiots?
Just sounds like you're victim blaming Chekhov here to me. That's all.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it. I am. What a fucking idiot.
But anyway,
I can understand if somebody else is driving the car, but to reverse over yourself, no.
see, it's more common than you actually think, and
Well, I'd be googling it. So I don't think
on the, I really don't want to cite it, but on the Reddit discussion about this, there is a lot of instances of people saying, yeah, my uncle did this, he reversed over himself, this happened, da da da. Whether you take that as a pinch of salt or whatever, but it's not that uncommon. But
Okay.
go on.
Right, so is there not a difference between reversing over yourself, right, and pinning yourself against something with your own car? Because if you reverse over yourself, right, you've literally not got to move out the way as the car is passing over you, and then you just you could just put your arms up like that, and then the wheels just go, and then the car just cracks on its journey, and you're in the middle of all four tyres. Am I taking crazy pills right now? This is too fucking logical.
I mean, it's not the Fast and Furious, it's real life. I mean...
Yes, that's the point. It's real fucking life. How are you?
I don't know, but how astounded were we all when this happened to Brian? So...
I didn't even know that it happened to him, so...
He was eating jacket potatoes. He was eating it, and then... I don't know how it happened, but he almost died. But he did have a song in 2019, so he's doing well at the minute. Well, I don't know about doing well, but he's surviving.
Still alive?
He's surviving. Anyway, we'll do a separate E17 episode
And how
later.
stupid their
Yeah.
songs were.
I don't think Gabrielle thought that. Anyway, move on. Right, so
Gabrielle made that tune. They give her some lyrics, and she was like, no. Let's not do it your way, let's do it my way.
Christmas #1. All I'm saying.
Yes, it was, because Gabrielle wrote the bastard.
I think Tony Mortimer wrote. Anyway, so Kay and her husband had apparently known each other since the early 70s. And there they are, the crazy bastards. But
She looks like a fun-loving girl that would roll out of the way of a reversing vehicle.
yeah, and he doesn't look like Frank Sinatra at all. So they'd really got to know each other after Bob was released from prison in 1982. So
Her mum was our than not with that.
yeah, I mean, this is probably the highlight of the story because there are so many twists and turns in this. It's like unreal. So Bob was inside for drug dealing, and Kay met him and said she'd wait for him, whatever. She met him outside the prison on the day he was released, and they got married later on. But before Kay met Bob, she was working as a successful insurance executive. But after they got married in 1985, they started their own oyster farm. A little bit of a career change there.
An oyster farm?
Yeah, and if you would believe it or not, after 6 months, they ran into financial trouble.
Who'd have known? Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah.
Because most oyster farms are really successful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's quite apt that we both drinking because they both started to drink heavily after their financial troubles started to surface.
Yeah, like they were drinking when they decided that was a game changer for them. No, what we should do after this vodka though, we should open it. Oyster. Wait for it. Fucking oyster farm.
I got a great idea. Hear me out. You may think I'm crazy, but
What were they hoping for? Like, what, they were just waiting for them to make some pearls.
I don't. Maybe, or maybe it was kind of like.
Were they like selling them to eat, or
I don't know, because I mean, this is what
training them for the sauce.
This is the 80s, like. It's not the swinging 60s where free love and sex and you can say, oh, they're aphrodisiacs. This was the 80s when everyone hated each other and didn't even look at each other. So
nobody even ate oysters in the 80s. They ate turkey dinosaurs and be done with it.
yeah, and
they're coming back, by the way.
TV dinners. Not if Jamie Oliver gets his way. So
turkey dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Jamie Oliver can suck my dick. I'm having my turkey dinosaurs back.
You heard it here first. That's the be on our OnlyFans and Patreon. There were also reports of domestic unbliss as well, and Kay was told a couple of friends that Bob was violent towards her, and she'd been spotted with bruises and on occasion a couple of black eyes. She'd also
as good as mine.
yeah. Atreya's got a bruise on her leg, by the way. Not that she's got a black eye.
Yeah, no, look. No black eyes.
Yeah,
no black eyes.
just in
Definitely
case.
No black eyes. No,
But if you want to comment on it in the comments section, please comment, subscribe, and like, because it helps the algorithm. But Kate had also told her mother, Esther, that she was not happy in the relationship, and they were actually planning to go to couples counselling. Now, on the day of September the 30th, 1987, the day of Kay's death, she'd apparently come into a large inheritance, $50,000 to be precise. And to celebrate, the couple went out that evening to a country club. And by all accounts, Kay was the life of the party. She did get a little bit drunk.
Just inherited 50 grand, why wouldn't you? Although, who did she inherit it from? Because it was like, woo, someone's just died and left me 50 grand, let's go out and drink. She can't have been very close to the person who died.
Yeah. I think it was like some distant relation.
Like the rich uncle that everybody wishes they had because they don't know about him and he's a recluse somewhere in Alabama or something.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, by all accounts, Kay was the life of the party, and Bob did try and impress people in his own way. In one of the ways he tried to impress people is that he gave the bartender a very large tip.
With Kay's money?
See, now...
What a prick.
Yeah, so they're in financial difficulty, and he decides to do that. It's a little bit of a red flag, is it not?
It's her money.
Exactly. So, this was the kind of the straw that broke Kay's camel's back, if you say, and she stormed out, and she, by all accounts, drove home. Now, Bob didn't notice.
She'd had a drink.
See, now this is where it gets a bit.
Naughty.
Yeah. By all accounts, Bob hadn't noticed this, and by 8:45, he'd looked around and gone, "Fucking hell, my ride's gone." Didn't mean that in a literal sense, but Kay was driving, and he was dropped off by friends at his home at 8:45 p.m. Now, the Hall's residence is, or was, 14 miles away from the club. Now, it said 14 miles, but I've heard it was a round trip to the club and back of 16 miles. So I'm not really sure. But it was that far
So
away.
it was 8 miles back to the house.
Yeah. So it was a distance, let's say. And Kay's body was found 2 miles east of the club. So the blue house is their home, and the car is where Kay's body was found.
In the opposite direction of home.
Yeah. So, in fairness, Kay was twice the legal limit to drive when she was found. So, she could have got a bit confused, taken a left.
I mean, night driving be hard.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I mean...
Did she go there very often, though? Like, if she goes to this club very often, then night driving's not a thing, because you got on autopilot. But if it was, like, her first time...
No, it weren't.
Then she... Well...
It weren't their first time. They were... I'm not going to say well-known, but it was a place where they frequented.
She wouldn't have messed up. Even when you're drunk, you always find your way home.
You say that, but... Kay's
A
body...
girl always finds her way home.
Okay, fine. But Kay's body was found under the tyre trucks, and it looked at first as though she'd been reversed over. But then when the brake was applied, the front wheel kind of skidded and kind of pinned her underneath the front wheel. So basically she's behind the car. The car's reversed over her, but then for some reason the angle of the car has then changed and skidded.
Of her own car that she is now not driving because she's under it.
Yes. So
Okay.
someone may have applied the brake, or maybe the brake kicked in automatically. Whatever.
I'm not sure if that's a good...
I don't
That's a good function in a car.
I don't
for
think
brakes
it-
to be kicking in automatic.
I don't think it's a design thing. It's not Tesla, and even then, I wouldn't trust it.
No.
The problem is, even though the engine was still running when the car was found, the gear that the Americans have was in park. So in essence, the handbrake was up.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have moved.
No.
There was also signs of a struggle in the cab, as her necklace and 3 fake fingernails were found on the floor.
Ooh, takes a lot to get them off, you know.
So, when the police turned up, they went, oh, maybe it is a little bit of an accident. And then they looked in the cab and went, no, maybe not. So, Bob quickly became the chief suspect.
That's fair.
It gets fairer, trust me. A state trooper turned up at his house to tell him the bad news, and all they said to him was there'd been an accident and Kay had passed away. He never specified what had happened, but later, when the lead investigator, David Riley, turned up, Bob met him basically by saying, Kay's been run over. And he's
How
like,
did he know that she'd been run over?
no one's told him this.
How did he get home as well? And
So,
when he got home, why did he not go, where the fuck's my wife?
His guilt was compounded because when the police turned up, the engine of his Jeep was still warm. So they were a 2-car family. They'd taken Kay's car that night and he'd left his at home. So when the state trooper turned up and went, there's been an accident. Not an accident, there's been an incident, because accident implies that there's no one to blame.
No one was to blame.
Indeed. They must have gone, oh, I'll just lean on this Jeep a little bit. Oh, that's a bit warm. Oh, that engine's been running, hasn't it? So when Bob was faced with this, he was asked beforehand, like, when David Riley turned up, he said, have you been anywhere tonight? And he went, no, I've just been here. And he went, so why is it, like, why's your car warm? And he went, oh, well, in fairness, I've just been down to the end of the road, turned up at home, my wife's not here, so I thought, oh, I'll just have a drive down. Couldn't see her, so I came back. Now, he'd been drinking as well, so, I mean, he's admitting this to a police officer, so he's like...
Yeah, but when was the law changed so that you couldn't drink when you drive anymore? Because I think you could at some point in the 80s, couldn't you? I mean, I wasn't old enough to drive in the 80s. I was, 4, so it's not something I've ever done. But
I mean, I don't ever think it's been legal, but I think in these kind of places,
it's never been illegal, has it? Up until like modern day times.
Yeah, but it's like small towns, isn't it? If they know you, then you probably get away with it a little bit more than if you're doing it like down the fucking main street of...
He wasn't very smart, was he? Because if it was me, I'd have been like, well, I came back pissed as a fart from this party that I was just at the country club, and I locked myself out like a dickhead. Couldn't remember where the key was, but I had my car keys on me, so I just sat in the car, get a bit warm, put the blowers on, innit? And I thought, I'll just wait here till Kay gets home, because she'll have her key, and she doesn't show up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, dickhead, it's under the fake rock in the garden, there's a spare in there, and so I just went and got that, and I thought I'll wait for Kay in the warm.
I'm glad you've just come up with that off the top of your head. That's not worrying at all.
Do you know, it's not, that's the problem, okay? That didn't take 5 seconds to think up. Why did Bob not think of that?
I think as we go on, you'll see probably why he didn't think of it. So, although Bob was the chief suspect, and there's a lot of factors pointing to it, the problem is the route from the murder site back to their home was... David Riley drove this on multiple times, the lead investigator, and it took him between 17 minutes and 24 minutes. So, her body was found at 9:55 p.m. He was taken home, and he has witnesses because he was dropped off at 8:45 p.m. So that gives him a very short window. And bearing in mind, he's got a finder. There's no GPS. There's nothing like that. He doesn't know where she's gone. As far as he knows, she's in Canada. Do you know what I mean? She's just stormed out. She's not gone, I'm just going down the lane to have a little bit of a smoke and chill out. She's just stormed out, and he don't know where she is. So the timeline is very, very slight for him to be able to do this. And there were no witnesses that saw Bob or his Jeep in the area. But there are witnesses that say they saw Kay drive over a lawn and almost into a swimming pool.
She was pretty pissed.
Yeah, so what were you saying about always finding home when you're over the limit?
I do. I mean,
not that you drunk drive. Not that you drive drunken.
I mean, at night. I
Yeah.
just find my way home at night.
Yeah.
And if I'm really, really pissed and I'm directing a taxi driver, I always think I'm very eloquent in my directions with the taxi. I'm just like, yeah, that's lovely. If you just take the next right, please. Yes, just by that bus stop. That's fantastic. Thanks ever so much. So he thinks I'm get posh.
What? Because you get dropped off next to bus stops?
No, because I'm very eloquent with my fucking directions. Dickhead.
So you ask for your card and you fucking OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, also problematic to this timeline was phone records show that Bob actually made a phone call at 9:47 p.m. to his daughter. So he is back at home at 9:47. So he had 62 minutes from being dropped off, finding Kay, murdering her, getting back and making this phone call. It's not impossible, but if it's taking this detective 24 minutes and he's sober doing this, Bob had been drinking. Now, he wasn't... We don't know how drunk he was. I mean, he did give a big tip to a bartender. Whether he's generous or it wasn't his money or he was pissed, don't know.
But he would still have had to... So say Kay went in the opposite direction, he still had to get dropped off at home, then get in his car, then go to wherever she was, and then get back to his house. So...
Exactly. So he's doing a round trip, and he's got a murderer in this time, and make sure she's dead, because...
It's quite a bit fine.
Exactly.
Even if, say, she'd gone home, and he'd gone home, and then he'd driven out and killed her, he would still have to get back home and then warm his car up. So that doesn't make any sense either.
So it's for the police, it's a little bit of a headache for them, and nothing actually happened until December, and Bob, as we will now find out, isn't really a genius. So he called up David Riley, and this wasn't a police interview. This was just, let's have a meeting, let's have a talk. Now, David Riley was like, he's the number one suspect in this case. He wants to talk. I'm going to fucking record him. Okay. So during this meeting, Bob asked for a Christmas present. And obviously, David Riley was a little bit confused, and he said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I've met a new lady, and I'd like this case to be solved by Christmas."
Okay, so you know what? I was...
Seriously?
I benefit the doubt with Bob, but now I've changed my mind again.
Oh, don't worry. You'll go full, this is
just like that fucking arsehole Chris Watts, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's... I don't know if it's worse, because... I mean, you be the judge.
Okay.
So basically, he wanted the case solved by Christmas because he thought this may hinder him in his upcoming new relationship. Now, whether he didn't want to put attempted murderer on his Tinder profile or he's already in a relationship, don't know. This was never categorically stated. But during this interview, Bob floated the idea of placing a journalistic piece in the paper to say that the killer had been caught. Now, Bob thought that this may flush the killer out to be kind of like a Son of Sam, like, no, you've not caught me, that's not me, ha ha ha, to try and taunt the police.
Right.
And David Riley turned around and went, "That's all well and good, but you are realistically our only suspect, Bob." And then Bob turned round and went, "Well, if hypothetically I had done this deed, if I confessed, would I be able to get a legal document that would say Kay's death was an accident and no charges could be pressed against anyone?"
What?
So because this isn't an interrogation, this isn't at the police station, this isn't a legal thing, this is just two people talking in a diner, let's say. Riley turned round and went, "You mental?"
Yeah.
But he went, "Well, if I was to go to the district attorney and let's say I just put Bob Hall's name on this document, would you sign it?" And Bob actually replied verbatim before Christmas.
What is
So don't let's not jump to conclusions yet about Bob's ineptitude, because he also went on to say, you know, on that document, could you actually put that I could claim Kay's life insurance
What?
and any insurance just in case, you know, my house accidentally burnt down? And David Riley had to interrupt at this point and go, "No, because that's illegal. That'd be fraud." And then Bob turned around and went, "Oh, well, yeah, I was just riffing."
I was asking for a friend. There was this friend who says,
Yeah.
one of my friends, I mean, we used to talk, but we don't talk now because he killed his wife and there was this big thing. And then he burned his house down. But, I mean, this friend, would he have got the insurance? Just asking for a friend.
It is legit the first time I think asking for a friend was ever used. And
Oh my god.
so Riley was just like, "We can't do that because that actually is illegal and it'd be fraud." And it was at this point that Bob kind of withdrew and said, no, all I want to do is try and push this article out just so the killer may come forward and say, "Oh, I've not done it." So, the case actually went stale up until this point because due to the tight timeline, prosecutors, if they put this in front of a jury, they weren't 100% that the jury were going to say he could have got there and back in this amount of time, because it's very tight, and any defender worth their salt would push that kind of case and go, "Nah, it's too tight. He couldn't have done this. He was over the limit. He was drunk. He wasn't in his right senses." Do you know what I mean? But
His new girlfriend could have, though, if she was seeing him beforehand.
well, yeah. But then in January of 1990, after this actual case had appeared on Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, there was a deluge of like tips about this, and one of the tips was from one of Bob and Kay's friends. Now, I don't understand why she didn't come forward sooner about this. Maybe she didn't know the intricacies of the case. But Carol Vandergraff was shot in the head by her estranged ex-husband 2 months before Kay was killed. So her husband broke into her house in Virginia and then proceeded to speed back to his ranch in Syracuse in New York. When he got back, he placed a series of phone calls to try and establish an alibi, to say he's been there since this time, so it couldn't have been him. But Carol, after she got shot in the head, she wrote his name in her blood. She wrote her ex-husband's name in her blood, but she also didn't die. So
That was unlucky for him, wasn't it?
yeah. So Bob and Kay would have been well aware of this fact and the fact that he rushed back to her house to try and set up the alibi.
Did he just copy a plan that didn't work the first time?
Yeah. So this seemed to be the piece of evidence that they needed. And in July 1990, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of Kay Hall. But, as I have alluded to, there is a thing called an Alford plea. Now, Bob appealed this conviction, and he was given a second trial. Now his defense attorney successfully argued that Carroll's testimony be taken out of this new trial because it was apropos of nothing. It didn't mean anything towards this trial. Which, when you've got these tiny margins, I really think it is a thing, and especially when they knew each other. It's not something he's read in the paper. It's something that he has first-hand experience of. But that was thrown out. The judge said, no, you can't do that. So, during this trial, when the prosecution realised this was going against them, they offered Bob what's called an Alford plea. Now, this is basically the prosecution has enough evidence to put you away, but they can't put you away.
What?
So, in North Carolina in 1970, Henry Alford had argued with someone at their house. Now, Alford left, and the victim was then shot dead later, answering the door.
Right.
So North Carolina had the death penalty, and at the time, Alford claimed that because he was in fear for his life, so he took a guilty plea to have a life charge. So he successfully argued that yes, he did have an argument with that person. Yes, he was in the area, but no, he didn't kill him. The only reason he said he killed him is because if he didn't and he went to jury trial, he would have been killed by the state.
That's some fucked up kind of law.
Yeah. So basically, this is from Wikipedia, and it's, quote, defendants can take advantage of the ability to use the Alford guilty plea by admitting there is enough evidence to convict them of a higher crime while at the same time pleading guilty to a lesser charge. Defendants usually enter an Alford plea if they want to avoid a possible worse sentence where they were to lose the case against them at trial. It affords the defendants the ability to accept a plea bargain while maintaining innocence. So basically, let's put it this way. In the way my brain thinks of it, say if you stole a car, drove somewhere, killed someone, made sure nothing to do with you about that murder was about you, but you left your prints on the car and the car was in the area and you had an argument with that person. You could say, yeah, I robbed that car, but I didn't kill that person, so I'll take 2 years for stealing the car, but not for killing the person. And the prosecution are like, we know you did it, we just can't prove it because the evidence is circumstantial. It's not, we don't have any eyewitnesses, but you're saying you'll go to prison for 2 years. So it's kind of a win to the prosecution, but not, it's not justice in any way, shape or form.
It is not.
So Bob Hall took this plea, this Alford plea, and because he served 2 years, the judge decided that that was enough. Yeah.
What?
So he let him go to 2 years, but gave him 15 years probation. So if he murdered anyone again in them 15 years, then he'd be back inside. But yeah,
I mean,
it's ridiculous.
No.
There's just so much evidence, but it's all circumstantial. That is the problem. It is all circumstantial because the evidence is saying they were having financial trouble. Kay come into $50,000 on the day of a murder. Let's say Bob wanted the money. When he spoke to David Riley about, hypothetically, he wasn't in an interrogation room. It wasn't an investigation situation. Bob reached out to him, and even though David Riley recorded it, it was inadmissible because it wasn't he never agreed to go on record. So everything's circumstantial, and the timeline of it is too close for him to be able to do it. It's like nowadays, if that happened, you'd be able to check GPS, you'd be able to check phone pings and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier nowadays to be able to do that. But back,
much easier to get away with murder in the olden days, wasn't it?
Exactly, there was so many crimes you could do. I mean, you could just move to the next town, put on a fake tash, and you're done.
Look at Jack the Ripper. He just went down the road.
I know.
He just, like, killed one woman. Oi, coppers, I'm over here. As the police are coming down, he was like, all right, yeah, I'm off to the next one down the road.
He didn't even move towns. He just moved boroughs. Streets, even.
Streets.
Yeah.
The streets, yeah. Oof.
But yeah, it's just it's one of the craziest.
That's infuriated me.
I know, and I am sorry. It is infuriating. There's a few more Alford plea cases that they're kind of unsolved, but you know who fucking did it. It's like that's unsolved, but it's like, yeah, Bob did it. And it's interesting. It is interesting to know as soon as after this he faded out of the spotlight. Like nobody has ever found him to follow up with this. Like, and there's so little information about this out there. There's only 2 pictures that I could use because there's, even when you Google K Hall, I know it's quite a common name, but
I bet it's in a 14.
It very well could be, but there's the Unsolved Mysteries bit, the Trail Went Cold podcast, and the Reddit, but that's on a subreddit of the Unsolved Mysteries, and even then there's not that many replies to it. It's everyone knows who did it, but they just can't prove it, unfortunately.
God damn it.
Yeah, it's
always the ones in the 80s that piss me off the most.
That's because it was Wild West time back then. Jesus, I mean, cops were bent as anything.
It's so obvious, but there was no piss and DNA testing.
That's it as well, and I think there's a few like unsolved cases, like John and Jane Doe's now, that they actually were, because you don't know who they are, they've kept the DNA and stuff like this. But I think like with the Beth Barnard case as well, because they think it's a foregone conclusion, they don't keep the evidence,
which is bullshit.
Yeah, they just kind of rush it through to try and get a result, and then this kind of thing happens, and we're kind of stuck with this frustration. But yeah, so that's interesting. It's not the greatest one, because it's sad, really, because...
I mean, Bob, I'm not saying you did it, but you're a shitty husband.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day...
Don't spend her fucking money.
Yeah, she was doing so well without him, and then she fell in with the wrong crowd. I'm not victim blaming, but she fell in love, and she tried to do what's best for each of them, and it backfired on her, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
And I still maintain the comment that I said right at the very start, which is, you can't reverse over yourself.
Yeah, well, let's just take a minute, just to moment of respect. Voted by the people. Everybody in the house of love, one love, one tribe. Everybody in the house of love. I've not listened to that for about 20 years, I'll be quite frank with you.
So he says. Go check his Spotify.
Oh, God. I mean,
You have gone so down in my estimations.
oh, come on. Well, the lyrics aren't it's not an opera like Meatloaf. It's repetitive. But anyway, yes.
You know what it is? I don't know whether I do want to go to Saddle with Moore with you. I feel like you scare all the beasties away.
Oh,
All the werewolves be like, who's that? Some humans over there. Yeah, but who's that prick singing He's 17? I don't want to hear him.
be using
It's nasty.
using my playlist, I tell you.
You know what Sam and Dean in Supernatural say? Driver picks the music. Shotgun shuts his cake hole.
Well, we'll see. We've got a saddle worth more. Need a shotgun.
And a shovel.
Heard it here first.
Why do you keep playing He's 17? I'll probably give me
Exactly. The week after we do that, there'll just be one of us sat here. Well, it won't be me. I know that.
I'll just leave you on the moors and drive off.
Yeah, cheers.
Picked up by a trucker.
You say that like it's a... Anyway,
You love getting your ass out. Good use.
on that bombshell, this has been the MO podcast with me, Contumacious Ant.
And me, Atreya.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we shall see you next time. Bye.
The MO Podcast. The MO Podcast. The MO Podcast. The MO Podcast.